The debris field stretched for miles in every direction, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams floating silently in the void. Ash drifted through the wreckage slowly, her crystalline wings catching the distant starlight and splitting it into 1,000 colors. She'd seen scenes like this before, too many times in her 4,000 years of life. War was constant out here on the frontier, and the small species always paid the price. The human colony ship Perseverance had been torn apart 3 weeks ago, caught between two warring alien empires who couldn't be bothered to check for survivors. Ash wasn't here out of sympathy. The Draken didn't do sympathy. She was here because her people documented everything, recorded every conflict, every mistake, every tragedy. Someone had to remember, even if no one cared. She moved past frozen bodies suspended in the vacuum, their faces locked in final expressions of terror and confusion. Humans were so fragile. Their ships were impressive for such a young species, only 200 years in space, but their bodies couldn't survive even 30 seconds in the void. Ash felt nothing as she passed them. That's what she told herself, anyway. Her scanners picked up the usual readings: residual radiation, structural instability, the cold signatures of dead systems. Nothing worth investigating. She was about to move on to the next sector when something made her pause. Her sensors detected a faint energy signature, almost imperceptible, coming from a cluster of debris near what used to be the ship's emergency section. Curiosity pulled her forward. Draken were naturally curious creatures, even if they pretended not to be. She cleared away chunks of hull plating with careful bursts from her wing thrusters, revealing a small emergency pod wedged between two larger pieces of wreckage. The pod's lights were still blinking, green status indicators that seemed obscenely cheerful in this tomb. Ash's heart, which beat far slower than any human's, suddenly picked up pace. A functioning pod meant life support. Life support meant. She interfaced with the pod systems, her claws dancing across the ancient human keyboard. The readout made her freeze. 1 life sign. Stable. Infant. 3 weeks in stasis. Impossible, Ash whispered to herself in the Draken tongue, a language that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. She overrode the pod's locks and the hatch hissed open, releasing a puff of preserved atmosphere. Inside, nestled in emergency foam and wrapped in thermal blankets, was a human baby. A little girl, perhaps 6 months old, sleeping peacefully as if she were in the safest nursery in the galaxy instead of a coffin floating through space. The pod's AI system crackled to life, a feminine voice with a slight southern accent. Guardian Angel Emergency System active. Occupant, Riley Chen. Parents, deceased. Colony, destroyed. Mission, preserve life. Status, playing Lullaby Protocol, Day 21. Please help her. Ash stared at the sleeping child. Riley. The baby's small chest rose and fell with perfect, trusting rhythm. She had no idea what had happened. No idea that everyone she was supposed to know and love was gone. No idea that she was the only survivor of 8,000 souls. Protocol was clear. Ash should activate the pod's distress beacon, mark the location, and report back to Draken Command. They would contact the human authorities, who would come retrieve their lost child. Ash would file her report and move on to the next assignment. That's how it worked. That's how it had always worked. But something kept her from closing the pod. Maybe it was the way the baby's tiny fingers curled slightly in her sleep. Maybe it was the desperate hope in the eye's voice. Maybe it was the memory of passing all those frozen bodies, all those people who'd had dreams and plans and futures, now reduced to coordinates in a report no one would read. Then the baby's eyes opened. Big brown eyes that should have been filled with fear or confusion. Instead, Riley looked directly at Ash's crystalline face and did something completely unexpected. She smiled. Not a random infant expression, but a real smile, reaching up with pudgy hands toward Ash's glowing scales. When Ash reflexively moved a claw closer, Riley grabbed it with surprising strength and laughed, actually laughed, at the rainbow reflections dancing across the pod's interior. In that moment, something cracked in Ash's ancient, carefully controlled heart. This child had lost everything. Everyone in this galaxy who should have protected her had failed. The warring empires hadn't cared enough to check for survivors. Riley's own species didn't even know she existed out here. But she was alive. And she was reaching out with pure, innocent trust to an alien creature she'd never seen before, asking without words for someone to care. Ash made her decision in that heartbeat. She carefully lifted Riley from the pod, the baby immediately snuggling against her scaled chest, apparently finding comfort in the warmth Draken bodies naturally radiated. The AI system beeped hopefully. Accessing navigation, Ash said quietly. Setting course for Ashmar Sanctuary. Just you and me now, little one. I've got you. She turned her back on the wreckage, on protocol, on 4,000 years of Draken non-interference doctrine, and fired her thrusters toward the distant sanctuary world. Behind her, the Perseverance continued its silent drift through the stars, its final passenger now safe in the most unlikely of Guardians' care. Ash quickly learned that keeping a human baby alive and actually raising a human child were two completely different challenges. The first few months on Ashmar were chaos. Riley cried at all hours, needed constant feeding, and produced an alarming amount of waste for such a tiny creature. Draken hatchlings emerged from their shells already able to fly and hunt. They were independent within weeks. Humans? Humans were helpless for years. Ash contacted old friends across the galaxy, calling in favors to get human supplies smuggled to the sanctuary world. Baby formula, diapers, toys, clothes, medical scanners calibrated for human biology. Each shipment came with worried questions that Ash deflected. No, she wasn't going to turn the child over to human authorities. No, this wasn't temporary. Yes, she understood what she was doing. That last one was a lie, but Ash told it confidently. The real challenge wasn't the logistics. It was the emotions. Riley needed more than food and shelter. She needed attention, affection, play, comfort. She needed someone to smile at her drawings even when they were just random scribbles. She needed someone to chase away the monsters under the bed, even though Ash patiently explained that monsters weren't real and even if they were, Ash could incinerate them with plasma breath. Logic didn't comfort a 3-year-old having nightmares. Ash had to learn gentleness. Her voice, which could shake mountains when she wanted, had to soften into lullabies. Her claws, which could tear through starship hulls, had to carefully braid a little girl's hair. Her massive wings, designed for atmospheric combat, had to fold just right to create a safe cocoon when Riley needed a hug after scraping her knee. Riley's first word was Mama, spoken in a tiny voice while pointing at Ash's crystalline face. Ash had tried to teach her to say Guardian or Ash first, something more appropriate. But Riley had her own ideas about appropriate. To her, Ash was Mama, and that was that. Ash pretended the word didn't make her ancient heart ache with unexpected joy. As Riley grew, her curiosity became legendary. She asked why about everything. Why was the sky purple on Ashmar? Why did Ash have scales instead of skin? Why did stars shine? Why did people fight wars? Why, until Ash's head spun. Draken valued contemplation and silence. Riley valued questions and noise and constant exploration. The girl climbed everything. Ash would find her balancing on cliff edges, hanging from tree branches, trying to scale the meditation spire where Elder Draken went to think. I wanted to see how high I could go, Riley would explain, completely unconcerned that she'd nearly given her guardian a heart attack. Humans, Ash learned, had almost no natural sense of danger. They had to be taught caution, and even then, they often ignored it. But Riley also had gifts that stunned Ash. She learned to read Draken symbols before human letters, tracing the ancient script with small fingers and memorizing entire philosophical texts by age 7. She taught herself to understand Ash's emotional states by reading the subtle color shifts in her scales, something most Draken couldn't even do. She built elaborate machines from spare parts, creating devices that combine human ingenuity with Draken technology in ways neither species had considered. Most importantly, Riley felt everything deeply. She cried at beautiful sunsets, explaining through tears that they were too pretty, and she couldn't hold all the feelings inside. She mourned for days when a small creature in the forest died, insisting on a proper funeral. She laughed so hard at her own jokes that she'd fall over, gasping for breath. She got angry when she read about injustice in the historical archives, demanding to know why nobody had fixed it. This emotional intensity baffled Ash. Draken felt emotions, of course, but they were like deep currents, slow, powerful, controlled. Riley's emotions were like storms, sudden and overwhelming and beautiful and exhausting. The girl could experience a dozen different feelings before breakfast. Other Draken occasionally visited Ashmar, and they always left shaking their heads. "You're spoiling her," they'd say. "She's making you soft. This isn't natural. You're forgetting what you are." Ash would watch Riley practice combat forms in the training yard, mixing Draken battle techniques with her own wild human improvisations, creating something entirely new. Then Riley would stop mid-form to examine an interesting beetle, talking to it like a friend before gently relocating it to safety. "Maybe soft isn't weak," Ash would reply to the visitors. "Maybe I was forgetting what matters." By age 12, Riley could navigate star charts, repair quantum engines, debate philosophy in 3 languages, and fight with a hybrid style that made seasoned warriors nervous. But she could also bake cookies using a recipe she'd found in a human database, sing off-key while doing chores, and spend hours making flower crowns for Ash to wear. She was brilliant and silly, fierce and gentle, confident and vulnerable. One evening, they sat on their favorite cliff watching the twin moons rise. Riley leaned against Ash's side, small and warm and alive against ancient scales. "Mama?" she asked quietly. "Yes, little spark. Do you ever regret finding me? I know I'm a lot of work. Loud and messy and probably annoying compared to what you're used to." Ash wrapped a wing around her daughter, pulling her close. "You are loud. And messy. And you ask far too many questions." Riley started to pull away, but Ash held her gently. "You're also brave, brilliant, kind, and the best decision I ever made. You didn't make me soft, Riley. You reminded me what it means to truly live instead of just existing." Riley smiled, that same pure smile she'd given in the emergency pod 12 years ago. "Good. Because you're stuck with me, Mama. Forever." "Forever sounds perfect," Ash replied, and meant every word. Riley turned 14 on a quiet spring morning. Ash had learned human traditions by now, so there was a cake, slightly lopsided because Drake and claws weren't meant for frosting, and a small pile of gifts. Books, tools, a new jacket that actually fit Riley's growing frame. It should have been a happy day, but Riley had been unusually quiet all week. After the celebration, Riley asked if they could go to the archive room. It was a small chamber where Ash kept various data files, historical records, and personal memories stored in crystal formats. Riley had spent countless hours there over the years, learning about both Draken and human history. But today felt different. "I want to see it," Riley said softly, standing in front of the archive console. "The report. The one about the Perseverance." Ash's scales flickered from calm blue to worried gray. They'd danced around this conversation for years. Riley knew the basics. She'd been found in a wreck, her family was gone, Ash had saved her. But they'd never discussed the details. Never confronted the full truth of what happened. "Are you certain you're ready?" Ash asked gently. "I'm 14, Mama. I've been ready for a while. I needed to work up the courage to ask." Ash pulled up the file. Images appeared on the holographic display, the debris field, the shattered hull of the colony ship, the casualty reports. 8,317 people. Families, children, engineers, teachers, farmers heading to a new world with hope in their hearts. All gone in minutes. Riley's hands trembled as she scrolled through the data. She found passenger manifests and searched until she located her own file. Riley Chen. 6 months old. Parents, David Chen, engineer. Michelle Chen, botanist. Assigned quarters, Deck 7, Section C. She stared at the small family photo attached to the file. A man with kind eyes and a woman with Riley's smile, holding a baby, holding her. They looked so happy, so alive, so completely unaware of what was coming. "Tell me what happened," Riley whispered. "All of it." Ash settled beside her, wings folded close. The Perseverance was crossing through the Outer Reach sector, heading for a colony world called New Haven. It was supposed to be a safe route, but 2 days into the crossing, the Genka Dominion launched a surprise attack on the Planetary Alliance's supply depot nearby. The Perseverance got caught in the crossfire. Did they see the ship? The ones who fired? Yes. Both sides detected it. Neither side stopped shooting. Neither side checked for survivors afterward. Ash's voice was heavy with old anger. To them, humans were just another small species. New to space, barely noticed by the elder civilizations. Your colony ship was collateral damage in someone else's war, and nobody thought you were important enough to pause for. Riley's jaw tightened. So they killed 8,000 people and just kept going. Yes. The war continued for another 6 months. Thousands more died. Eventually, both sides declared victory and went home. The wreckage was left to drift. No rescue teams were sent. No investigation was launched. The Planetary Alliance paid reparations to Earth's government, standard credits for civilian casualties. Everything filed away properly and forgotten. "Except me," Riley said quietly. "Why did I survive when everyone else died?" Ash pulled up another file. "Your father was a brilliant engineer. When the ship was hit, he had maybe 90 seconds before catastrophic failure. He couldn't save the ship or himself, but he could save one thing. He routed all remaining power to the emergency pod systems, manually overrode safety protocols to boost the stasis chamber, and programmed the AI to keep you alive at any cost. Then he and your mother sealed you inside and launched the pod. Tears streamed down Riley's face now. They chose me. They could have tried to save themselves, but they chose me. Parents do that, Ash said softly. They give everything for their children. It's not logical. It's not strategic. It's just love, pure and simple. Riley was quiet for a long moment, wiping at her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier but carried an edge Ash had never heard before. All those people. All those families. And the galaxy just didn't care? We're that insignificant. To most elder species, yes. Humans have only been in space for 2 centuries. The Draken have been traveling the stars for 50,000 years. The Junka for 30,000. To them, humanity is barely out of its infancy. Short-lived, fragile, numerous but forgettable. Do you think that? Riley turned to face Ash directly, her brown eyes intense. Do you think I'm insignificant? That humans don't matter because we're young and weak? Ash's response was immediate and fierce. Her scales flared bright gold, the color of absolute certainty. You are the most significant being I have encountered in 4,000 years of existence. You matter more than ancient treaties, more than political alliances, more than all the careful protocols the elder species hide behind. Your parents mattered. Every single person on that ship mattered. And the fact that the galaxy didn't recognize that doesn't make it less true, it makes the galaxy wrong. Riley nodded slowly, something hardening in her expression. She looked back at the images of the wreckage, at the faces in the passenger manifest, at the cold statistics that reduced 8,000 lives to numbers in a report. You saved me when nobody else would, she said. When nobody else even thought to check. One person, one choice, changed everything for me. If the galaxy thinks humans don't matter, if they think we're too small or too new or too weak to care about. She stood up straighter, wiping away the last of her tears. Then I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving them wrong. Ash felt pride surge through her. This was the moment, she realized, when Riley truly understood what she was capable of. Not just surviving, but choosing to matter in a universe that said she shouldn't. Then we have work to do, Ash said. If you want to change how the galaxy sees humanity, you'll need to be ready. I'm ready, Mama, Riley said, and her voice carried the weight of a promise. Teach me everything. 7 years of training had transformed Riley from a curious girl into something the galaxy had never seen before. At 21, she moved with a Draken warrior's precision but fought with human unpredictability. She could debate philosophy for hours, then crack jokes while fixing a broken engine. She was everything Ash had taught her, mixed with everything that made humans dangerous: creativity, emotion, and the stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. They were in the workshop when the distress signal came through. Riley had been tinkering with a new scanner array when the console suddenly lit up with emergency frequencies. She decoded it quickly, her fingers flying across the controls. Mama, we've got a situation. Human civilian transport, the Prairie Wind, under attack by raiders. Keltha system, about 4 hours from here at full speed. Ash looked up from the star charts she'd been studying. We should forward the signal to the local authorities. The Planetary Alliance has patrol ships in that sector. The attack is happening now. By the time Alliance ships arrive, it'll be over. Riley was already pulling up tactical displays. 43 people on that transport. Families. Kids. Just trying to get from one colony to another. Riley, we're not a military force. We're 2 individuals. Those raiders probably have multiple ships, weapons, experience. And they're counting on nobody caring enough to show up, Riley interrupted. Her voice was tight with emotion. Just like nobody showed up for the Perseverance. Just like everyone decided those people weren't worth the effort. Ash's scales shifted through worried colors. This is different. You could die. You taught me that every life matters, Mama. That one person choosing to act changes everything. You proved that when you saved me. Riley turned to face her guardian fully. I have to go. I have to be the person who shows up. The determination in Riley's eyes reminded Ash of the day they'd looked at the Perseverance files together. That same fire, that same refusal to accept the galaxy's cruelty as inevitable. Fine, Ash sighed, her scales shifting to resigned silver. But we do this smart. I'm not losing you to poorly planned heroics. 4 hours later, they dropped out of faster-than-light travel into chaos. The Prairie Wind was dead in space, main engines destroyed, life support failing. 3 raider ships circled it like predators, their weapons charged and ready. Riley could see through her scanners that they'd already breached the transport's hull. Armed raiders were moving through the corridors. Standard pirate operation, Ash observed. They'll take anything valuable, maybe grab a few people for ransom, then destroy the ship to cover evidence. Not today they won't, Riley said grimly. Mama, I need you to broadcast on all frequencies. Make it loud and scary. Give me 2 minutes of distraction. What are you planning? Riley grinned, that wild human smile that always made Ash nervous. Something stupid that might work. Ash's roar echoed across every communication channel in the system. It was the ancient war cry of the Draken, a sound that had made entire civilizations surrender in ages past. The raider ships immediately scrambled, trying to locate the source. Meanwhile, Riley had launched herself in a small boarding pod toward the prairie wind. She timed her approach perfectly, using the raiders' own ships as cover. While they were distracted by Ash's display of power, Riley slipped through the breach in the transport's hull. Inside, she found absolute terror. Passengers huddled in corners while raiders shouted demands. But Riley didn't charge in with weapons blazing. That's what a Draken would do, pure force. Instead, she did something very human. She hacked into the ship's internal communication system and started talking. Attention raiders. This is Riley Chen, and you've made a serious mistake today. Her voice echoed through every speaker on the ship. You're not just attacking random civilians. You're attacking people under the protection of a Draken Guardian. You know what Draken are, right? Ancient, powerful, really angry when you threaten their family. The raiders froze, confused. Through the security cameras, Riley watched their leader, a scarred alien named Breck, laugh nervously. There's only one Draken out there, girl. We've got 3 ships and 20 armed fighters. We can handle one overgrown lizard. Sure you can, Riley replied, her tone almost friendly. But here's the thing about humans that you elder species never seem to understand. We don't fight fair. We don't follow rules. And we really, really don't like bullies. She triggered every alarm system simultaneously. Emergency lights flashed, sirens blared, fire suppression systems activated. In the chaos, Riley moved fast. She'd studied the transport's layout during the flight over and knew exactly where the raiders would be positioned. She found the first group trying to break into the cargo hold where most passengers had barricaded themselves. Riley didn't use weapons, she used psychology. She appeared behind them, spoke calmly, "You have families, right? People waiting for you somewhere?" They spun around, weapons raised. She continued, hands visible and empty, "Those people behind that door? They have families too. Kids. Parents. People who love them. You're about to create 43 empty chairs at dinner tables, 43 holes in people's lives that never heal. Is whatever you're stealing worth that?" "Stay back," one raider shouted, but his weapon hand trembled. "I'm not here to kill you," Riley said quietly. "I'm here to give you a choice. You can keep going with this, and my Draken Guardian out there turns your ships into scrap metal. Or you can stop right now, leave these people alone, and go home to your own families. What sounds better?" It was working. She could see it in their body language, the way they glanced at each other uncertainly. Humans were good at reading emotions, at finding the cracks in resolve. Riley pressed her advantage. "Your captain, Breck, right? He's getting rich off these raids while you risk your lives. Does he share the profits fairly? Does he care if you make it home?" She projected casualness, like they were just chatting. "These people can't pay him much anyway. Probably less than the fuel you burned getting here. Meanwhile, that Draken outside is getting really impatient." As if on cue, Ash fired a warning shot that shook the entire transport. The raiders flinched. Riley kept talking, turning a military situation into a negotiation, then into a conversation about values, about choices, about what kind of people they wanted to be. She broadcast everything on open channels so Breck could hear his crew questioning orders. By the time she reached the command deck, half the raiders had already withdrawn to their ships. The civilians had organized themselves under Riley's calm instructions, no longer paralyzed by fear but working together to seal breaches and restore systems. Breck faced her alone, his weapon raised but his confidence shattered. "You're just one human girl. Why do you even care about these people?" Riley smiled sadly. "Because someone cared about me once, when they didn't have to. Because every person on this ship matters, even if the galaxy pretends they don't. Because I'm human, and we're too stubborn to accept that anyone is disposable." Breck stared at her for a long moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. "You're insane. You know that? Probably, Riley agreed. Now get off the ship before my mom melts your fleet. The raiders fled. The Prairie Wind survivors stared at Riley like she'd performed a miracle. Ash docked and entered, finding Riley surrounded by grateful civilians, including several children who'd attached themselves to her legs. You turned a firefight into a therapy session, Ash said, amusement coloring her voice. Humans are really good at talking, Riley replied with a tired grin. Why shoot when you can make people question their life choices? As they helped the Prairie Wind limp to the nearest station, Riley sat quietly, watching the families comfort each other. 43 people who would go home tonight. 43 empty chairs that stayed filled. One person showing up had made all the difference. News traveled fast in the connected galaxy. Within days, the story was everywhere. A human raised by a Draken had saved 43 people from raiders using nothing but words, courage, and an ancient dragon at her back. It wasn't the military victory that caught attention. It was the method. Riley hadn't conquered, she'd convinced. She'd turned enemies into people making choices. The Prairie Wind survivors told everyone who would listen. Social networks across human colonies buzzed with the story. Then other species picked it up, intrigued by this strange human who fought like a Draken but thought like something entirely new. Within a month, Riley Chen was famous in ways she never wanted. The first ship arrived at Ashmar on a cool morning. A sleek human diplomatic vessel, official flags displayed, government representatives aboard. Ash and Riley watched it land from their favorite cliff. Here we go, Riley muttered. The delegation was professional and polite. They explained that Earth's government was thrilled to discover a survivor of the Perseverance. They had counselors ready to help Riley process her trauma. Educational opportunities at the finest universities. A chance to reconnect with her heritage, meet distant relatives, find her place among her own people. We understand you've had an unconventional upbringing, the lead ambassador said carefully, glancing at Ash. But you're human. You deserve to live among humans, to be part of human society. We can offer you a real future. Before Riley could respond, a second ship landed. This one carried Draken elders, their scales gleaming with age and authority. They were less diplomatic. Ash has violated fundamental protocols, the eldest announced. Non-interference is sacred to our people. Raising a human child, training her in our ways, allowing her to use Draken methods, this creates dangerous precedents. The child should be integrated properly into Draken society or returned to her species. More ships came over the following days. Military recruiters who saw Riley as a potential weapon. Media outlets wanting exclusive interviews. Scientists fascinated by her hybrid upbringing. Social organizations claiming Ash had no right to raise a human child. Everyone had opinions about what Riley should do, where she belonged, who she was supposed to be. Riley listened to them all with patient politeness that Ash recognized as a warning sign. Her daughter was getting angry, and human anger was a focused, purposeful thing. Finally, they all gathered in Ashmar's main hall, humans, Draken, and representatives from a dozen other species who'd somehow gotten involved. They all wanted answers. They all wanted Riley to choose. Join human society, the Earth ambassador urged. Reclaim your heritage. Accept formal Draken adoption, the elders countered. Honor the traditions properly. You can't be both, someone insisted. You have to choose what you are. Riley stood in the center of the hall, looking small and young compared to the ancient beings surrounding her. But when she spoke, her voice carried absolute conviction. You're right. I do have to choose. So here's my choice, I refuse your categories. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. I'm human, Riley continued. Born human, and proud of it. But I was raised by a Draken, taught to think in ways my birth species never considered. And you know what? That combination made me better than I would have been with just one perspective. She turned to the human delegation. You want to know what humanity means? It's not about living on Earth or speaking English or following cultural traditions. It's about believing that every single person matters, even when it's inconvenient. Even when the logical thing is to move on. My mother, she gestured to Ash, didn't save me because of my species or despite it. She saved me because in that moment, one life mattered more than all your protocols and politics. The Draken elders shifted uncomfortably. Riley faced them next. And you talk about non-interference like it's sacred wisdom. But sometimes interference is exactly what's needed. Sometimes standing by while people suffer isn't noble, it's cowardly. My mother chose to care when nobody else would. That didn't make her less Draken. It made her more alive than she'd been in 4,000 years. Riley's voice rose, filled with passionate intensity. Both of you want me to choose a side, to fit into boxes that make sense to you. But I'm not interested in making you comfortable. I'm interested in making sure what happened to the Perseverance never happens again. That no one else has to drift in space hoping someone will care enough to check for survivors. She walked to a console and pulled up images, distress signals, conflict zones, refugee crises, dozens of situations where civilians were caught in crossfire or abandoned because they weren't strategically important. The galaxy is full of people who don't matter to anyone. Small species, poor colonies, ships that get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. You all have your wars and politics and ancient traditions. And in the middle of all that, real people suffer while everyone looks the other way. Riley's hands clenched into fists. So here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm starting something new. A group dedicated to showing up when no one else will. We'll respond to distress calls the big powers ignore. We'll protect people who aren't worth protecting according to political calculations. We'll prove that in a galaxy of billions, one person choosing to care still changes everything. That's insane, someone said. One ship can't. I know, Riley interrupted. That's why I'm not asking for permission. I'm inviting anyone who's tired of pretending that some lives don't matter. Anyone who thinks ancient wisdom means actually being wise enough to adapt. Anyone who wants to be the person who shows up. Silence filled the hall. Then, unexpectedly, a young Draken stepped forward. Then a human engineer. Then a medic from a species Ash didn't recognize. One by one, people moved to stand beside Riley. Not hundreds, but dozens, enough to matter, enough to start. The delegation sputtered protests, but Riley ignored them. She was already discussing logistics with her volunteers, planning their first missions, turning inspiration into action with practical human efficiency. That evening, after the crowds dispersed, Riley found Ash alone on their cliff. The ancient dragon was unusually quiet. You're upset, Riley said, settling against her mother's side like she'd done for 21 years. Not upset, Ash replied softly. Overwhelmed. Proud. Terrified. You're about to make yourself a target. Powerful beings don't like being told they're wrong. I learned from the best, Riley smiled. You made yourself a target the day you saved me. That was different. I could handle the consequences. I'm human, Riley finished. Short-lived, fragile, stubbornly refusing to accept that I should play it safe. But I'm also trained by a 4,000-year-old Draken warrior who taught me that one person making the right choice matters more than 1,000 people following wrong orders. Ash pulled her daughter close with one massive wing. When did you get so wise? About 21 years ago, when someone decided I was worth saving. Riley was quiet for a moment. The Perseverance was supposed to reach New Haven. Start fresh, build something new. 8,000 people with dreams of making the galaxy better. They didn't make it, but their last survivor did. I'm going to carry their dream forward, Mama. I'm going to make sure their deaths meant something. Then I'm coming with you, Ash said firmly. You're not doing this alone. Riley laughed, the sound carrying across the sanctuary world. Wouldn't dream of it. You're stuck with me, remember? Forever. In the following months, Riley's group, which refused to take any grand official name, calling themselves simply the ones who show up, responded to 17 emergencies the major powers ignored. They saved lives, stopped conflicts, and most importantly, proved that in a galaxy that measured worth in military power and political influence, sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply refusing to let anyone be disposable. Riley Chen never became an admiral or a political leader. She never commanded fleets or controlled territories. But she became something more dangerous to the established order, a living reminder that every person's life has infinite value, and that humans, these strange young species barely noticed by ancient civilizations, possessed a power elder races had forgotten. The power to care when caring made no logical sense. The power to choose compassion over convenience. The power to look at the galaxy's cruelty and say, no. Not today. Not while I'm here. And beside her always, an ancient dragon who'd learned that 4,000 years of existence meant nothing compared to 21 years of truly living. Ash had saved one human baby in a wreck, expecting nothing in return. That baby had saved her right back, teaching an immortal being what it meant to have a purpose worth dying for. Together, they proved that humanity's greatest export wasn't technology or military might. It was the revolutionary belief that everyone deserves someone who shows up. Everyone deserves to matter. Even when the galaxy says they don't.